In the government, and they're wringing the government by the neck, and the government isn't doing a thing for the people. Okay? They just want more wealth and more power, the international bankers. The government is not helping us. They are helping themselves. George Bush is just a puppet of the international bankers. Here is the receipt. $13.65 overnight mail. White Plains City Court on the stupidity and ignorance of Sadly Stevens, Burke, and Burke, and the judge should never have signed that order to show cause to stay Glendora from our collection. And another $13.65, one to Sadly Stevens, Burke, and Burke, liar for hire, New York, Park Avenue, and the other one to Hainsbury, the judge. I'm going to call up now and see if they will cancel tomorrow night's hearing.
Catch your breath. I'm trying to put her to sleep.
Oh, okay.
You want to
She didn't finish her bottle, so I was going to try to.
Oh, I was going to put her to sleep.
Well, that might.
Michelle, Lori asked me to come down to the Okay, now we need this, and we're going to start. Well, what do you want to do? How do you want to do it? Do an assembly line? You put the thing on?
Yeah, I put the thing on. I'm walking on my shop. All my bags are Let's just use it. Okay, let's put this in a holding pattern someplace else where it's not in the way. Vivian. Well, I didn't think about that.
Yeah. This is even more complicated. This is the soup kitchen at the Salvation Army in Hudson. And they're giving the people, the Seventh-day Adventist Church is doing the cooking today, right, Vivian?
Yes.
Yeah.
Next set of 4 sessions will be in May,
The next cooking school.
and the place will be given.
Oh,
That's why I'm
okay.
asking you for your address, so you know.
Yes. I think probably Ruth Ann will write me. Folks, just before I left to go and report to you about the Seventh-day Adventist Church feeding the hungry at the Hudson Salvation Army, I had this conversation with the White Plains City Court, Paul Friedman, who I think is very good. He's a clerk, small claims clerk. I think he's very good, although he didn't show much acuity this morning. And I want you to hear this.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, good. How are you?
All right. What can I do for you?
On October 5th, I was served the order to show cause, but there was no affidavit, no memorandum of law.
I don't believe there is an affidavit with the order to show cause because...
Yeah, there were. There were 2 affidavits. There was one from Swarrick and one from Masterilli. They were not served on me. So I answered what I had as best I could. And I sent that by overnight mail to Sadly Stevens, Burke, and Burke. And I sent you a copy.
Okay.
Did you see it?
No, I didn't get it yet, but I'll...
Well, you should have got that. That was...
Well, the mail was kind of slow.
It's not that slow.
Yeah.
That was mailed out on October 12th.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's surprising. Yeah, I don't think I got it. Let me check.
No, okay, wait a minute. I want to go through my story. And then, when they, Sadly Stevens, Burke, and Burke got my 42-page answer, jumped to the order to show cause, they jumped on an overnight mail and sent the affidavit and the memorandum. And so I I took 10 hours answering that. And yesterday, I sent my answer to them by overnight mail, and I sent a copy to you, to Judge Hainsbury, and you should get it this morning. It's guaranteed by noon today.
Okay.
Now, they claim that the White Plains Court had no jurisdiction because Cecilia's from Peekskill. But the rule in Westchester County is that any small claims action can be brought in any one of the 5 city courts in the county of Westchester. White Plains, Mount Vernon, Rye, Yonkers, or Peekskill. I chose to bring my action in White Plains.
Mm-hmm.
They were ignorant not to know this law. And also, Hansberry should have known it, and he never should have signed that order to show cause.
Well,
Right?
I mean, he's gonna, agree with the order, so far. It just means he's giving them,
Well, the thing is, he should have known that.
I'm sure the judge knows that,
That any
thinking something else.
any small claims action can be brought
Mm-hmm.
in any of the 5 city courts of Westchester County. So they have jurisdiction. They have no argument. Furthermore, they said that I served Cecilia at home. I didn't serve her. You did.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no law that you have to serve Cecilia at home. You serve her at her last known business address.
Well, yeah, wherever
So now,
she went to, yeah.
yeah, so now on the basis of that, will you find out for me, Paul, if Judge Hansberry will cancel my appearance tomorrow at 4?
He's not gonna. There are 2 reasons why he wouldn't do that. Because one, he's not gonna be here till tomorrow. So it's the first time he's gonna be seeing it. It's gonna be tomorrow when it's called on the calendar.
He's not going to see it until he gets to the bench?
Well, not till he gets to the bench, but before small claims starts and he comes in.
Well, now you see that is excessive injury to me because it's 125 miles down there, it's 125 miles back.
And also, since the order show cause has already been signed, you can't cancel it. There's nothing to do.
I'm not asking him to cancel that, although there's ample reason why he should. But I am asking him to cancel the appearance tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't believe he can do that.
Can't you get it? Oh, so he's not a regular judge, okay?
No, he is a regular judge.
He's a lawyer. He's a lawyer. He only comes in on small claims. He's not a regular judge, right? He doesn't have an office there in White Plains Court.
No, he does have an office in the court, but he's a part-time judge, so he's not here all the time.
He's not here Tuesday afternoon?
Nope.
Well, okay, I've sent a copy of everything to Mayor Delfino and to the Common Council.
I don't know if they're going to be able to help you, though. I don't know what that's...
Well, in White Plains, as you know, the judges are not elected. They are appointed.
Yeah, the corporation council.
And I think this should go into the personnel file. Yes.
Wants to do that, but that's, it's his choice. Well, I don't understand why he'd want to do that now.
Well, I do, because he never should have signed it and he should have known the law.
But what if you come to court and you find out that he signed it for a different reason? Then
He has no different reason to sign it. Those were the 2 things from the order to show cause. On the basis that she was served at a business, and on the basis...
There can't be anything different, Paul. It has to be addressed only what was in the order to show cause and nothing outside of it. There can't be anything different.
It couldn't be brought in White Plains. And those are 2 ignorances, is what they are. It's just not knowing the law. And now I've got to come all the way down to White Plains. It'll take a day and a half. I have to stay overnight.
Well,
Okay.
But then you didn't have to, you chose the White Plains Court that started, so...
Excuse me? What'd you say?
You chose to start in White Plains Court, so it can't be that bad for you. If you started the action yourself, why would you be upset about coming down to take care of it?
Because there's no reason to come down. The whole order to show cause was ignorant, and even the service is fatally defective. They never served according to the order to show cause. That's totally defective. And I have pointed this out in all my papers. And for you to tell me my papers aren't going to be read is bad. Bad.
They're not going to be read. They said they're not going to be read in time for the judge to cancel your appearance.
Oh, yes, they are. Because that paper of mine is coming in there tomorrow. It was in come to you within the 2 hours, I think you should call the judge, and I think you should tell him that and alert him to that.
Hold on 1 second.
Okay. Time is 10 a.m. Okay, I'll turn off the recorder.
Okay.
Okay, Paul. Now, I'm going to say again, I think you should alert the judge, and I think that he should seriously consider canceling this hearing tomorrow on the basis.
I know, he's just...
Okay, I maintain you're not showing due diligence. If you do not alert the judge after I've done all this, then I think the court fails in due diligence.
I tell the judge that you sent us papers.
Well, get the paper to him.
He's gonna...
Get the paper to him.
Part-time judge, that means he's not working here every day of the week. Like
Okay, then your court is dysfunctional, okay? Your court is not...
That's a small claim, that's the way it works. And it's an order to show cause anyway, so he can't cancel it.
Yes, he can, because the order to show cause was ignorant, and he was ignorant to sign it.
That's how you feel. You should have filed a motion rather than a letter. But
I didn't file a letter. It was an answer to the affidavit. It's 30 pages long.
they said there wasn't an affidavit.
Paul, didn't I explain to you that when they got my first letter that there were no affidavits? Didn't I just explain to you that on the next morning they sent me the affidavits and the memorandum, and it took me 9 hours to answer that? I explained that to you.
Okay, so you're talking about the answer they just shipped over to you like the other day?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The whole thing is explained in my paper, and it's fully comprehensible, and if these people do not read it and stop this hearing Wednesday, then that is not due diligence, and I'm going to complain about it.
Well, if they're going to read it, they're just not going to read it and then cancel it.
They should, Paul. They should.
That's not what happened. That's not how things...
I don't care. Then the court is dysfunctional.
You care about the law is what you're saying.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying this court is dysfunctional. When I send an overnight and pay $14 for it, that it doesn't get read until Wednesday or it doesn't get read at all? No, this court is dysfunctional, and I'm going to let Mayor Dickerson know.
It's overnight, so we could get here a day before.
No, it's coming. Paul, don't you listen to me? It's coming this morning. Within the hour, it will be in the court.
That's not a day before when the case is...
Yes, it is a day before. The case is to be heard.
Well, how can you expect the court to read paperwork that's going to be...
I do expect the court to do it. I do expect the court, and let me tell you something. If this court doesn't do it, this court is going to be sued in the United States federal court for violation of my civil rights. And there's no question
of your civil rights. You're not giving the court ample time to...
I'm giving the court ample time. Paul, you just don't seem to hear and intercept. This thing went out of here. It's coming in your court before noon today, and it costs $14 to do that. It's coming before...
Listen, I'm trying to explain something to you. If you sent it 2 weeks ago... Or
I didn't. Never mind the if. I didn't. I sent it overnight.
That's right.
It's due in your court this morning.
That's right. It's doing
And
it...
so I think that... All right, okay, I'm being stonewalled here. Let me
You're
talk...
not being stonewalled. I'm telling you exactly what you're telling me.
No, you're not. Okay, you're going to be sued, Paul.
How long is the answer that you sent us today?
32 pages.
Okay, so you want the judge to come...
Yes, I do.
Read 32 pages?
Yes. He read the pages when they came up to sign the order to show cause, didn't he?
Yeah, but that was sent way before... You understand what I'm saying?
I'm saying if he read it, the order to show cause, he can read mine. Okay, Paul.
He's going to read it.
Paul, we're not going to get anywhere with you. Let me talk to Judge Freer, please.
I'll put on whoever I can get. Hold on.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I think we made our case, but it amazes me that he's so thick, that he doesn't understand what's going on.
How could you make it much clearer, folks?
Okay, what page was this?
2,236. We're waiting for Paul.
And curious reporter, it's 10:05. Okay, I think I'm going to have to go. It's 10:05, and when the pastor's wife comes, and we're going to the Salvation Army to feed the homeless and the poor. And that appointment is for 10:15. Oh, okay.
I did actually just right now receive your answer, I believe.
Yep, that's right. That's exactly when you should receive it.
Express mail, you sent it?
No, overnight.
Yes, got it.
Overnight. Okay, all right.
Folder.
Excuse me?
As soon as the judge is here, there's some small claims.
I don't think it came on the recorder. Paul said that he went into Judge Freya, and she was in the courtroom on the bench, so he couldn't interrupt her. So I left, I think, that I would call him at 4:30 p.m.
I can't tell you right now because I don't know who it's going to be.
Okay.
But once the judge is here, they will read it. But that's all I can tell you. I can't tell you they're going to cancel it.
No, you can't. But I'll call you back, though, tomorrow morning. Oh, no, that's too late. I have to leave at 7 o'clock. Let's see, I'll call you back today before 5.
You can do that. That's fine.
What time do you leave, Paul, 5 or 4:30?
That's fine. If you call around 4:40, then I will, 4:30 actually would be better.
All right.
And I'll be able to know.
All right, honey. I have to run, too, because our church is feeding the homeless and the hungry, the Salvation Army, today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're feeding them at noon, and I have to go. The pastor's wife is coming at 10:15. So I have to go, too. All right, sweetie. I'll call you at 4:30, you suggested.
Yeah, that's a good time.
That's good. And we'll see if we can't cancel it. Otherwise, I will be there.
Okay.
Okay. Joke of the day?
All right, sure.
Well, the tape ran out. The joke of the day is that the obituary said that the family requests you do not send flowers, that instead all donations be made to MasterCharge and Visa. Okay, I'll keep you posted on this, folks. So what do you think is going to happen, folks? Well, it's pretty hard for a court to do the right thing. The right thing, of course, would be to cancel the appearance. But courts don't do the right thing because they've been wrung by the neck by the international bankers to take away justice and to take away our rights because the international bankers want to enslave us. Was it clear to you folks that Paul did say that in his hand, just now, he had received the overnight 32 pages? He had received it, and that was by 10 o'clock. Folks, like George Washington, we won the Battle of White Plains. The court called back and said that Glendora did not have to come to the hearing tomorrow at 4 p.m., that the matter could be decided upon the papers submitted. Hip hip hooray. And would Glendora fax this in writing to the White Plains Court and to Satterley, Stevens, Burke, and Burke? And Glendora did, and it's the first time in her life she ever sent a fax. Can you believe that? And she also called the Satterley, Stevens, Burke and Burke and left a message that there would be no hearing in White Plains tomorrow at 4 p.m. Right is right.
Oh, yeah. And then another cute shot was I was collating this White Plains paper, and it was 42 pages, and I said, here, folks, I want you to see my helper. And as I got down to page 42, there is .com lying on her back, but it with her eyes wide open, looking at me upside down, and her hands in the air. I said, I want you to see my helper. I said that she would make a good judge because she likes to sleep on legal papers. That's right. I see that.
That's Glendora and Mary Ramage. It was good not to have to go to White Plains, but it was a disappointment to Mary because she was looking forward to the fun that we would have. We always have fun together. This is Glendora to Jim Bernath.
Who had a bad day on the golf?
Harry had a bad day on the golf course. He threw his golf bag into the pond. He threw his golf balls into the pond.
And he threw his golf balls into the pond. And he threw his golf bag into the pond. And he threw his golf clubs into the pond. He goes up to the clubhouse. And he slits his wrist. And he's standing there bleeding to death. And his friend George comes in and says, hey, Harry, how about a game of golf tomorrow? And Harry put one wrist on top of the other and said, what time?
That's cute.
October 19th, as the Sony Mini DV Cam is telling you, and it was 2 years ago today that Franklin Fuller Buell, my husband and the only husband I ever had, left us. And I'm reading here the morning devotions that this comes from the first book of Timothy, and it's the 6th chapter, and Paul says that we brought nothing into the world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. Well, it's true that Franklin did not carry anything out. He left it all for us. I wrote this out for you, that Franklin Fuller Buell, June the 3rd, 1919 to October 19th, 2003. He was amiable. He had qualities of kind-heartedness and good-natured complacence. And he was pleasant and friendly, and he was a gentleman. There's very few of those today. And these are all things that caused him to be liked. He was very, very well liked. He was liked instantly. And he wrote very well. Let me go and get the book that he wrote. It's underneath the Bible. He liked to tell about the little people doing good things, something of love. He was a reporter for 27 years, a newspaper reporter, Buffalo Evening News, and before that 10 years on the Springfield, Massachusetts Union. And he did not carry it out of this world. He left it for all of us. He was faithful to his Buffalo News job. He would not write articles that the owner of the Buffalo News wanted written that were opinion, were not fact, and that would promote the monetary interests of the owner of the Buffalo News. He had integrity. And he took care of his wife, and he left her food, clothing, and shelter, and transportation. At this point, I said I have to stop everything, and I have to tell you. Now, there were more great things that St. Paul said. But those who desire to be rich fall into corruption, temptation, and a snare, and into many foolish and harmful lusts which drown men in destruction and perdition. Isn't that so? That's very good. Again, this is 1 Timothy chapter 6. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, for which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. That is so true about the international bankers that I tell you about, who are trying to take away your freedoms and who are trying to ensnare you. And I think who are dropping ethylene dibromide out of the sky to try to kill you. They want a one-world government, and they want to be it. And they've robbed you of justice in the courts. There's no more justice in the courts. They've robbed you of the Constitution. The Supreme Court of the United States, practically every decision puts a hole in the Constitution. Are you going to let them do it? Are you going to stand up to them? They want a one-world government. And they want to be the head of it. And they want you to be their slaves. Everything they do is money. And the money is magnetized up to them. They took away our gold and silver, made sure we didn't have any gold and silver, put us in jail if we wouldn't give it up, and then they give us worthless paper. Worthless paper. So, St. Paul has it exactly the way it is. But you folks, O man of God, it says, flee these things and pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, and gentleness. And that's what Franklin Fuller Buell pursued. One of the things that you would like most about Franklin Fuller Buell was his sense of humor. He laughed so easily, and he saw the humorous side of everything. And it was like a deep, deep well of baseball information. If you turned on the spigot, this affluence of stats just poured out of him. Minute after minute after minute, and it never dried up. The RBIs, the assists, where the baseball player was born, where he died, and what team he went to from which team, on to which team. He saw Lou Gehrig play, and he saw Babe Ruth play, and he kept a baseball scrapbook. And I think he would spend at least an hour or two a day reading the New York Times box scores. And he subscribed to Sporting News. Sporting News gave him a lifetime subscription when he was 10 years old. And they kept sending letters to see if he had died yet. And I believe the next month after he bought the lifetime subscription, it was something only like $10. This would be in around 1929. And then next week in the Sporting News it said that some famous baseball player in Boston, and Roger Hornsby and Franklin Buell bought lifetime subscriptions to the Sporting News. I think he was a great speller, folks. He wrote very, very, very well. And he certainly was a good audience for David Letterman, the day we went down to be on the David Letterman show in Manhattan. And he promoted peace. And he was a good newspaper man. So that's a reminiscence of Franklin Fuller Buell, who was born on June the 3rd, 1919, and died on October the 19th, 2003, 2 years ago today. And he's with us now. You can feel his kindness, his peace, and his presence, and you can feel his sense of humor, and his goodwill, and his gentlemanliness. And for 48 years, he listened to my jokes. And he heard them over and over again. But you could always see him begin to smile because he was in anticipation of the listener going to laugh, because he knew the listener was going to laugh, and he would begin to smile. And then when the listener laughed, he would laugh just as hard as they did, no matter how many times he heard these jokes. Now, about some golf jokes. The golf partner said to his friend, "How come you're so late? You're 20 minutes late." And his golf partner says, "I had to toss a coin to see if I was going to mow the lawn or whether I was going to play golf. So that should take 20 minutes? Yeah, I had to toss it 40 times. And the golfer sliced the ball and went through the woods, went onto the road, and rolled into a field. And so the golfer picks up his bag and he starts to go after the ball, and his partner says, "You're not going to go after that ball, are you?" And the golfer says, "I have to. It's my lucky ball." And everybody was applauding John because he got a birdie on the 5th hole. The problem was that he was playing the 6th hole. And a wife says, "You're so wrapped up in golf, you don't even remember our wedding anniversary." He says, "I do too. It was the day that I sunk the 30-foot putt." And if anybody ever tells you that you drive them crazy, you tell them that's not a drive, that's a putt. Now, Harry had a bad day in the golf course, and he threw his golf bags into the pond, he threw his golf balls into the pond, he threw his golf clubs into the pond. He went up to the clubhouse. He slit his wrists. He's standing there bleeding to death. And George comes in and says, "Hi, Harry, how about a game of golf tomorrow?" And Harry says, "What time?" Marilyn says she has nice even teeth, that 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9 are missing. And the girlfriend was telling her girlfriend that her boyfriend said that when he looked into her eyes, time stood still. And her friend says, "Yeah, that's what my boyfriend told me. He told me I had a face that would stop a clock." A woman says, that you have to talk to your plants. You have to talk to your plants. And her husband said, "I never heard him answer you." She says, "Well, that's because they're mums." And she says, "But I have one plant I won't even speak to. He thinks that he knows everything." This is Glendora, A Cheerful Look at Life. And it's brought to you by obesity. You know, I think it's every third person is obese. And I mean obese. I mean wide, and so out of shape. And so I start counting them, you know. Oh, there's a person who's right weight. There's a person who's thin, right weight. And there's an obese person. And I bet you that it's 1 out of 3. And a great place to do this, of course, is at Stewart's. The people who come in there, you can see the cause of their obesity. But I wish they wouldn't do it, because, you know, that's like carrying a 50-pound bag around all day long on your shoulder. Think of what that does to your heart. But there's advantages of it. There was an airplane crash, and a thin man and an obese woman, and they crashed and were in the woods, and they had no sustenance, and the thin man died, but the obese woman lasted quite a few days, 25 days or something, and they found her. So there's advantages to being obese. Okay, so that was our morning devotions from 1 Timothy, and you're hearing the hymns all right. Now let's say our prayer. My prayer is that every woman in the world shall have a husband like Franklin.
Little kitty wanna come in? Huh? Little kitty wanna come in? Little kitty wanna come in? She had her hands all the way up to the doorknob. I wanted you to see that. I wish she'd do it again. Here. Here. Can you open the door yourself? Can you? All right. Right to the food dish and the water dish. This is today's vegetarian lunch. Loma Linda vegetarian chick nuggets, a slice of onion,
a dill pickle, a small carrot, and coleslaw. Now this is Glenn to Bob Angelo. Glendora is, who's kept a chat with Glendora going in Ossining for many years.
The golfer had a hard time on the golf course. His name was Harry, and he threw his golf bag into the pond. And he threw his golf balls into the pond. He threw all of his golf clubs in the pond. He went up to the clubhouse, and he slit his wrist. And he's standing there bleeding to death. And his friend George came in and says, "Hi, Harry, how about a game of golf tomorrow?" And Harry put his two wrists together and said, "What kind?"
Oh man, I'll tell you. Always gets me.
Tape out, you know, this is like the first day of sunshine in 16 days. That is one thing to celebrate. Another one to memorialize is the fact that how many more days are we going to be able to videotape outdoors? Let me see how well it's going to see if I cut my head off. I do that quite often, and it just pleases Cablevision, so I don't want to do it very often. Okay, it looks all right, except the fact that I'm in it. I wanted to show you these envelopes. This is going to the chairman and owner of the New York Times, Arthur Sulzberger Jr. And on the back it says, "The New York Times is sold out." It's going to Eleanor Randolph, who is the chief of the editorial board of the New York Times. And it's going to Hero, Elena Sassauer in White Plains, who showed us that you have nothing to say as to the appointment of federal judges. And this is why the courts are so bad. This is why the courts are so bad deliberately. Why? Because everything is being run by the power and the money in the hands of the New World government. Who is that? It's the same people on the Federal Reserve Board. The same people who have taken our country and wrung its neck so that George Bush and everybody under him and over him is a puppet. And who are those people? Let me tell it to you very quickly. Rothschild in England, Lazare in France, Warburg in Germany, Seitz in Italy, and here in the United States, Chase Rockefeller, Goldman Sachs, and Lehman Brothers. The power and the money. In every transaction you see them. Yes, if there's any money to be had, like the Adelphia bankruptcy, for instance, you will see them there pulling it out. And they're pulling money out of the courts. They are running the courts. They are putting an eye in there. They are ruining the court. The first thing they did was to steal all of the justice in the courts. There is no more justice left in the courts. The next thing they did was to take away the Constitution. They take away all your power and all your money. And you remember when they took away all the gold and silver and gave us this worthless paper? They're the elite, and they're out to enslave us. And I think they're the ones who are paying for the airplanes to exude from their exhaust ethylene dibromide, a pesticide that forms these ugly clouds up in the sky. I can see a few of them. I am pretty sure those are jet airplane clouds, and they're not God clouds. Should I show them to you later? And James McKinley, who is the chief of the New York Times Albany Bureau. Look, folks, the New York Times is sold out. And I just told you to whom.
to George McDermott, great American hero in Washington, D.C. The New York Times is sold out. The bureau chief of the New York Times in Washington, D.C. And to Merrick Fuchs, a hack, nothing but a hack, who wrote the story about Elena Sassower, who went to jail and gave up 6 months of the freedom of her life because she was brave enough and American enough to go to Washington, D.C. to protest the appointment of Richard Wesley, a judge she knew to be corrupt, to the Second Circuit. And she went down there and spent her money and her life and her time to protest that. And she was set up and falsely arrested by the Washington, D.C. police and Senator Chambliss, another one bought by the Laissez Faire group. Let it all happen. An American who came to protest the appointment of a judge to the federal bench. And he wouldn't let her speak. And then he framed her. 6 months in prison. And you, Brian Holman, what you did to America and what you did to Elena Sassower is abominable, abhorrent, disgusting, repulsive, unpleasant. And ugly and unprincipled. And .com just went dashing up the hill, up the acclivity. Okay, so far for you, Merrick Fuchs. I got a lot to say to you, and I will, and that's what's inside of this envelope. So those are the people it's going to, and it's in response to these voluminous papers by Elena Sassower, who outlines here the New York Times willful and deliberate overlooking of the corruption in the whole judicial process. They're in on it. You, New York Times, you were in of it. Why don't we have justice in the courts? Well, because I told you the elite don't want justice in the courts. But how is it being done? Through the appointment of unprincipled, dissolute, profligate, abandoned, reprobate people in the federal courts. How many years have I been showing you the documents that this is the way it is? How many years? One federal court after another, all over the United States. The current ones are the United States District Court in Providence, United States District Court in Puerto Rico. And Omnibus 27 is coming up. And that's going where? I haven't decided. It's going to a United States District Court. So 18 pages of that, and 6 pages of this, a letter to Brian Calamy, the public editor who's supposed to see that the public has a say in the New York Times. The public I'm talking about. We got as much about say in newspapers as we did in broadcast TV when the FCC and this captured government took over or let NBC, ABC, and CBS take over our public's airwaves and just use it to make billions of money in radio and TV commercials. And here is Elena's letter to Bill Kerala enumerating his many
just turn his back on the public when she, Elena, wrote about the corruption in the selection of United States judges. And Elena went to Boston to stand up. I went to New York. Oh, for Pete's sake. I guess she did. But she went to Washington, D.C. to stand up for you and to fight for, of the people, by the people, and for the people. And she got put in jail for 6 months by a bunch of gangsters. You, Brian F. Holman. Now here is the odious article written by this hack, Merrick Fuchs, the New York Times. It appeared November 7th in the year 2004. Okay, I'm disgusted by this article. And so, I exploded and just let them know. Glendora refutes Merrick Fuchs, New York Times hack, as to his atrocity against Elena Sassower and America of November the 7th, 04. And this was written yesterday, October the 19th. Franklin and I wrote it together. 2 years ago, Franklin died. And yesterday, Franklin and I were very, very close. And we spent the day very closely together. And we worked on this very, very hard. And it's been 12 hours already. Glendora says Fuchs should go to jail for traitorship to the United States of America. I hate it when newspapers do not write the truth. What is the matter with these people? They have surrendered themselves to vice. They exhibit utter laxity of morals, open and shameless disregard of decency. And here it is. Noblesse oblige, the New York Times. Noblesse oblige, that means back in the medieval days that the nobles had an obligation to the common people. When the judge sledgehammered the gadfly. Now, can you think of a more dehumanized headline than that? Elena Sassower, a White Plains Hebrew school teacher and judicial activist, is, as even her staunchest defenders note, something of a handful. Her conversational style can best be described as relentless, and her passions expressed in long recitations can exhaust the most earnest listener. To this, Glendora says, this is such a disrespectful lead. The man has no respect for humans. And he has no respect for himself. You can't write a thing like that, folks, and make me believe that you have respect even for yourself. I have no respect for him. This is ad hominem. It's to the person. It's not to the cause. The corruption in judicial appointments, not just federal, but state and municipal. Or you say judges aren't appointed in municipalities. Well, they are in White Plains. Judges are not elected. They are appointed. Elena Ruth Sassower. The cause is wipe out judicial depravity. Glendora prays for this hack. Okay, I will pray for you, Merrick. I will pray for you, that you will reach the great God that's inside of you, the oneness of God that's inside of you, and that you will be a real person. He is in bad shape. What hurts severely is this, that the New York Times, speaking, the last vestige of good newspapering. Newspapers have gone down the drain. They are no longer what a newspaper should be. They are no longer noblesse oblige. They've gone down the drain, and the New York Times was the vestige the last of them. Franklin would be moribund. He idled the New York Times. Franklin was a newspaper reporter for 40 years. And he loved the New York Times, and he loved Meyer Berger. And he used to read the biography of the New York Times, written by Meyer Berger. Says Merrick, but even allowing for that, her defenders can't get past one little fact, that some of those Now, can you think of a more dehumanized headline than that? Elena Sassower, a White Plains Hebrew school teacher and judicial activist, is, as even her staunchest defenders note, something of a handful. Her conversational style can best be described as relentless, and her passions expressed in long recitations can exhaust the most earnest listener. To this, Glendora says, this is such a disrespectful lead. The man has no respect for humans. And he has no respect for himself. You can't write a thing like that, folks, and make me believe that you have respect even for yourself. I have no respect for him. This is ad hominem. It's to the person. It's not to the cause. The corruption in judicial appointments, not just federal, but state and municipal. Or you say judges aren't appointed in municipalities. Well, they are in White Plains. Judges are not elected. They are appointed. Elena Ruth Sassower. The cause is wipe out judicial depravity. Glendora prays for this hack. Okay, I will pray for you, Merrick. I will pray for you, that you will reach the great God that's inside of you, the oneness of God that's inside of you, and that you will be a real person. He is in bad shape. What hurts severely is this, that the New York Times, speaking, the last vestige of good newspapering. Newspapers have gone down the drain. They are no longer what a newspaper should be. They are no longer noblesse oblige. They've gone down the drain, and the New York Times was the vestige, the last of them. Franklin would be moribund. He idled the New York Times. Franklin was a newspaper reporter for 40 years. And he loved the New York Times, and he loved Meyer Berger. And he used to read the biography of the New York Times, written by Meyer Berger. Says Merrick, but even allowing for that, her defenders can't get past one little fact, that some of those relentless words, not threatening but apparently very annoying to a Washington judge, have landed her behind bars for speaking out of turn at a Senate hearing in 2003. She is now more than 4 months into a 6-month sentence in a medium security jail. It's so heartless. It's so savage. Does he see the issue? A woman standing up for you? A woman brave enough to go all alone to Washington, D.C. and stand up for honest judges and good judges on the federal bench? No. What is he? He is sold. He sold his soul to Mephisto. Miss Fisto, Lassard Frere, Rothschild, etc. And she did not speak out of turn. This hack is wrong. Ms. Sassauer and her mother, Doris, run a White Plains group called the Center for Judicial Accountability, and he left out the Incorporated. It specializes in frontal assaults on the clubby process that often puts judicial nominees under the bench. Their beef. You go to the dictionary, Merrick, okay? You got a very, very meager vocabulary. Their beef is more systemic than ideological nominations, they say, seem to go out to the most knowledgeable judges, but the best connected. He should work for the New York Post. This isn't up to the standards of the New York Times. They seem to go out to the most knowledgeable judges, not the best connected. That's what it should be, and that's what it isn't. And Glendora says, race cold locator, look at the record, Merrick, things speak for themselves. You're out of your element. You don't know what's going on in the courts. Or maybe you do, and you've been told to cover it up. Yes, that's what probably happened. Things speak for themselves. How is it he doesn't know this monstrous fact? Says Merrick, obviously this stance has not endeared her to the judicial establishment. Who cares? Who wants to be endeared to a bunch of crooks? Or the elected officials who approve nominations, on top of which add her reputation for delivering her views with the subtlety of a claw hammer. She happens to believe in the United States of America, and she happens to want to protect it, Merrick. Now, unfortunately, this is a run-on sentence, and he gets an E. An E! You wrote a run-on sentence. You ought to know better. A run-on sentence or an incomplete sentence, you automatically get an E. Classical High School, Springfield, Massachusetts. The subtlety of a claw hammer applies to the sleeves that he has written. Merrick has no soul. He sold it. How much did he get for it? What do you suppose he got for his soul, folks? How many dollars? He lost everything. You know, there's a hymn about that. When I survey the wondrous cross on which the Prince of Glory died, my richest gain I count as loss, and pour contempt on all my high pride. That's for you, Merrick Fuchs. Says he, when she began to focus on the nomination of Richard Wesley to the Second Circuit of the United States Court of Appeals, she was warned by police officers at the Capitol in Washington not to disrupt his confirmation. Gavel came down. Now this is inaccurate. This is ambivalent. She never spoke until the gavel was down, which abnegates any charge that she disrupted Congress. Congress was not in session. As a reporter, you have no acuity, Fuchs, says Fuchs. Unseemly as officials may have found this behavior, it is rare that even cacophonous outbursts result in charges, let alone jail terms. In May, when protesters disrupted a House Armed Services Committee session by unfurling a banner and shouting at Defense Secretary Donald H. Rumsfeld to resign, they were ushered out. But
not charged or arrested. Does that tell you anything, folks? Does that tell you anything? So continue down this path further and see if you can elicit the retaliation and censorship that is really happening. This is something you have apparently been suckered into, Merrick Fuchs. Your job is to give us Americans the eyes and ears of the city desk. Where did you study journalism? You are blind and you are deaf. You are not giving the city desk the eyes and the ears, which is what a newspaper reporter is supposed to do. Glendora charges Fuchs with disorderly newspaper reporting. And Fuchs was on to say that the appointment of Richard Wesley was confirmed. Of course it was confirmed. It was confirmed before the hearing ever even started. The whole thing is a mockery. And what did you do, Fuchs, to intercept Elena's mission? Elena's mission is to show the people of the United States that they have no say as to the quality of judges who are appointed to the federal bench. And why are the courts rotten to the core? And Fuchs says it was a production. Well, I think that's vague and senseless. And I think it's immature. You don't have the acumen, Fuchs, nor the expertise to know what happened in court transcripts. You just don't know that court transcripts are altered at the will of the judge, and the court stenographer is to change it. Change what really happened to what the judge wants you to think happened.
Because we increased your...
Merrick Fuchs, New York Times. You write non sequitur. You ramble anomalously, like an amoeba. When a prosecutor recommends a 5-day suspended sentence and the abhorrent Judge Brian Holman decrees 6 months, doesn't that give you some insight into Holman's judicial disability and misconduct, which is Title 28 of the United States Code, Section 371? What makes you so prejudiced and biased? You would make a good Richard Wesley yourself. Where did you go to journalism school? This is page 5 out of 14. My husband was a newspaper reporter for 34 years. He would be appalled at your lack of power to perform. Power moral, power intellectual, power legal, power spiritual, and power professional. He idled, I-D-O-L-E-D, the New York Times, and Meyer Berger was his model. He would be devastated by what you have turned the New York Times into. Glendora used to call Mr. Salzberger on the phone. That was back in 1996, 97, 98. I would call him every month and I'd tell him the joke of the day. And he would laugh so hard. He had a robust laugh. In one joke I told him, he said, "I'll tell that to my son." Judge Brian F. Holman of Superior Court gave Elena a 3-month sentence, but expressed a willingness to suspend it as long as Ms. Sassauer agreed to meet some conditions, to take anger management classes. Well, you're the one who needs the anger management classes, Mr. Brian F. Holman. Stay away from the Capitol complex. sever all contact with members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. This sounds like America to you? But what does it really tell you? And apologize. What does this really tell you, Fuchs? What does this really tell you, folks? They're scared to death of her. These little sissy senators are scared of a little tiny woman. You cannot discern that, Fuchs. She caught them. She pressed the panic button. It tells you she was right, and they were wrong, and so are you, Fuchs. And that you are doing nothing about America's freedoms being stolen. You ought to be in jail, Fuchs, for your lack of patriotism. Elena Sassower is a mighty all-American hero. Elena Sassower is a mighty all-American hero. Right under your nose in Westchester, and you are too myopic to see that, Elena Sassower showed the entire country that we the people have nothing to say as to the selection of federal judges. And this explains why the courts are rotten to the core. Now, I've been in courts all over the United States, state after state after state after state, as you, my TV audience and internet audience, attest. Not one of them is any good. Now, you should know why federal courts are no good. This is the gravamen, but instead of getting this to the people, Fuchs, you slither off into a frivolous, trivial driver of ad hominem. That's news. You cannot see the forest for the tree. You cannot see that the elite, the international bankers, the same mob that stole the Federal Reserve System is enslaving you. You can't see that. And who is this mob? They are Laissez-faire in France, Rothschild in England, Warburg in Germany, Sykes in Italy, and in the United States, Chase Rockefeller, Goldman Sachs, and Lehman Brothers. George Bush is just a puppet for them, as is the corrupted New York Times. They have taken the country, the United States of America, these elites, these hoods, these power, this wealth, and they have wrung its neck. I've told you so many times, we've got a great government, but it's been kidnapped. And now you know who kidnapped it. You can't see their stealthy progress to their one world government with no more sovereignty of America. You can't see this in the Eurodollar and in the Free Trade Act. You can't see that it is they who have robbed you of justice completely in the courts, as Elena Sassower so affluently demonstrated and was wrung of 6 months of freedom as an American. You can't see this, folks? Sure you can see it. He was told to write this garbage. He was told to do it. You can't see that it is they who have robbed you of the Constitution through the perversity of the United States Supreme Court. You can't see that these power fools and money fools who can't even be satiated as to their lust for power and money have taken the government and wrung it by its neck. We're getting up a wind here. And all you can see is that alphosis of a lead paragraph you wrote. You, who should be alert, on the watch, vigilant, prompt, ready, nimble, quick, are smothered in hack while your country is eroded. It is fitting today that I stand up for America and what the New York Times should be. Because October the 19th, 2003, yesterday, Anno Domini, my husband died 2 years ago today. This is a memorial to him, who offered his all on D-Day, June the 6th, 1944, who idolized the New York Times and Meyer Burger, and who was a gentleman. Elena will vouch to this. Says Fuchs, and we're on page 11. The apology, according to court transcripts and all
and an interview with Miss Sassower from a jail payphone. That's a nice place to interview somebody, isn't it? Was the biggest sticking point. She absolutely refused to apologize. Is that surprising? She absolutely refused to sell her soul. She absolutely refused to lie like Richard Wesley and Brian Holman and Merrick Fuchs in the New York Times. So Judge Holman retracted his offer to suspend and then doubled her sentence to 6 months. Isn't that a great way for a judge to act? An 8-year-old might act that way. Because this is what you've got on the bench. This is the kind of rubbish you have on the bench. Brian Holman is a model of that kind of rubbish. And so is Richard Wesley. And what does this tell you about Mephisto Holman? Naturally, you think she is a soul seller like you. Writes Merrick Fuchs, said he, Miss Sassower, once again, your pride has gotten in the way of what could have been a beneficial circumstance for you. The incarceration begins forthwith. Step her back. And so up comes the marshals and puts the handcuffs off, and she goes to jail. Because she is the only true American in that whole complex. Right! This is what is called extrapolation. Holman, instead of admitting to us that super was the truth about him, in other words, that his pride had gotten in the way of what could have been a beneficial circumstance. This is what Holman knows about himself, and this is a process in psychology of extrapolation. You have done wrong, and instead of admitting that you have done wrong, you extrapolate it onto somebody else. It is Holman who should be in jail, along with Senator Saxby Chambliss of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Senator Sham Chambliss. I sued all these people, you know. I sued Chambliss and I sued Holman. You can't see that it is they who have robbed you of the Constitution through the perversity of the United States Supreme Court. Writes Fuchs, even those who have found Ms. Sassower difficult emphasize that she has never been remotely threatening. Ralph M. Stein, a Pace University law professor, remembers her auditing his classes and attending talks he has given. She launched into polite but fulminating assault, and said Mr. Stein, but she never crossed the line. Do lawyers have your respect, Mr. Fuchs? Remember this about lawyers, folks, and remember this, Mr. Fuchs. Lawyers are not licensed by the state. All they have is a union card from a trade association called the American Bar Association. Doctors have to have a license in the state of New York. Would you go to a doctor who didn't have a license by the state of New York? Says Merrick Fuchs. He quotes State Senator John A. DeFrancisco, who has served on the State Judiciary Committee for 12 years and never got rid of bad judges, said that just after he took over as chairman, Ms. Sassower came to testify at a public hearing, welding a dolly with her and 3 or 4 big boxes of materials. She was impossible to keep on message, he said, and he eventually had to tell her that she could not continue. But in the end, she was harmless. Why do you abase, Fuchs, debase, degrade, humble, and humiliate? You should applaud her. You too are anti-American, along with DeFrancisco. And, says Fuchs, Nathan Levin, a well-known Washington lawyer, evidently agrees with that assessment. Oh, I don't hear him agreeing with it, Mr. Fuchs. This is all conclusory. He is working pro bono to free Miss Sassauer, who is 48 years old. You're such a bad writer, Fuchs. You have no facility, no force, no faculty. The quality of being able or being qualified is sadly not there. Make an honest living, will you, Fuchs? Go out and make an honest living. Live a life that you could be proud of, that your children could be proud of. Buy your children clothes and food with real money instead of tainted money. Merrill Folsom took better care of the White Plains Bureau of the New York Times than you do. And I knew Merrill up until the time he died. Right after his 75th wedding anniversary. And he died in White Plains. And I knew him. I believe he was about 95. Here comes your way through one of the greatest stories of the new millennium. And you topped the ball, and you let it dribble. You could have had a hole-in-one. Right, Fuchs? Elena makes things more difficult for herself. He's quoting Levin, than the ordinary person, Levin said. The judges are not supposed to lose their temper or be vindictive. That's exponentially what you did, Brian Holman. Your profligate litany, Fuchs, tells us much more about yourself and the people you mention than it does about Elena. You show no acuity. Even though the type is small and it is not double-spaced, we can read between the lines, can't we, folks? Thank heavens, here's Fuchs' last paragraph. It should be his last paragraph in a newspaper career. And Miss Sassauer, expressing few illusions about her relatively friendless state, put it this way: it's not a matter of who is on my side, but why are they not questioning what happened? I shouldn't be in jail. I'm just here because everyone is standing idly by. Absolutely right, Elena. She has plenty of friends, and this paper that I'm reading you demonstrates that she's not friendless. Glendora is her friend. George McDermott is her friend. And in her analysis of this rot by Merrick Fuchs, she has several quotes from people all over the country supporting her and applauding her. Says Glendora to Fuchs, you just cannot help being a Neanderthal, can you? Well, Elena has radiant friends, Glendora for one, George McDermott for another, et al., and many more. Speculatively, after Glendora finishes reading these 14 pages on her TV network of 48 TV stations and on the internet TV shows, she will have many more friends. Right? How many friends do you have, Merrick Fuchs? Glendora will pray for your flatus, that you be not so friendless. I will pray for this man. I will pray that he will touch the good God down inside of him, the oneness of God that's waiting for him, showing his real talents and his real abilities, and his real success, and his real wealth, and whatever it is he wants. Elena Super, in 52, has the last word, and she is right, and you are wrong. What you write is pablum. It is conclusory. You are not fully familiar with the facts and circumstances. You do not tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. My husband was a good newspaper reporter. You are not. My paragraph 57 is reserved. And this is dated October the 19th, 2005, Anno Domini, the year of our Lord, in the state of New York. Yours in truth and in amor patriae, Glendora. Without prejudice, Uniform Commercial Call, Article 1, Section 207. Gatwick, Glendora, and 48 TV stations, 480 municipalities, including Washington, D.C. All the news in the USA is controlled by 3 companies. The only place that you really get the news, folks, is on public access. This is Opus 1314. It took 9 hours to write it, and then I spent 3 hours reading Elena's papers. And I took an hour to videotape it for you. The cost to print and post it is $25.75. And Glendora proves that Elena Sassower is not friendless. Fuchs is wrong. And here is the mailing matrix. I've shown you the envelopes already. We are done. In big letters on the last page, Glendora proves that Elena Sassower is not friendless. Fuchs is wrong. Glendora sledgehammers the New York Times. I wouldn't read the New York Times for anything. I wouldn't read it. Finny, I'd like to repeat that this is the first day that we've had sun, even though the sun isn't unadulterated. There is that haze up there by the jet planes. Dibromide and barium and other poison that is fatal to us human beings. I'll show you later this haze. Did you see the sunset that I videotaped? The pink poison sunset? You could see. It was like tic-tac-toe. These chemtrails from these jets. And that stuff stays up there for days. And then finally it dissolves and comes to the earth. And you have to breathe it. No wonder it takes 6 weeks to get rid of a cold. Well, the blowouts are gone and the cough-ups are gone. They lasted 6 weeks. And you've got to give the body credit, how hard it worked to get that virus, or those millions of viruses, out of the body, through the nose and through the throat. You've got to give the body credit. Folks, I want you to do something for me. First of all, I'm going to sit down. Let me go change the camera and make sure I don't cut my head off. Many people would like to cut my head off. I'll be right back. I'll take these into the happy house. And then I'll line up the chalk, and then I'm going to ask you to do something for me. Because it's something that will make you happy. Okay, did I cut the head off? This is what I'd like to have you do for me. I would like to have you write down or call me up and put it on my recorder the reminiscences you have from the years 1998 to the year 2002. Would you do that for me? Because I want you to do that because I'd like to get you to audio tape these. Because you remember, when you die, all of these memories are going to go with you. And it would be nice for you to have a record of them. And now, and I've done this, I started out doing it on paper. That's rather laborious. Yeah, Merrick Fuchs is laborious to do your reports on paper.
do them electronically. And then I started doing them on audio tapes. And I had 8 90-minute audio tapes. And that got me up to the year 1998. And I said when I finished the 8th audio tape, that I would start doing it on videotape and incorporate it into a chat with Glendora. So what are my reminiscences from 1998 to 2002? We were in the courts, and we found out how crooked Magistrate Joan M. Azraq is in the Eastern District of New York, Brooklyn. We found out how crooked the other judges were. We found out how devious the clerks were. We found out what a racket it is, the public defenders. Azraq tried to force me to have a public defender, and I refused. Like Elena Sassower, I'm pro se. I will not be represented by a lawyer who has no license from the state of New York. We found out how brave Franklin was, and we went to Brooklyn practically every 2 weeks with a hearing before Azraq, and nothing just ever came out of that. And finally they wanted us to sign a statement that we were guilty. They wanted us to admit that we were guilty. Well, the first thing I find out about that I don't like is that it's a lie, and I don't like to lie. So I wasn't going to tell that lie. And then they tried to get us to drop the civil case. We sued Bruiser Ken, we sued the U.S. Marshal, we sued all of the Pinkertons, we sued the Pinkerton Company out in Los Angeles. We sued the chairman and the CEO and the president. We sued them all for the same kind of corruption that I've just delineated through Elena Sassower, through Carrot, American Fuchs, and the New York Times. And guess what they said? We'll drop this criminal case against you if you drop the civil case against us. No. No. No! We have to wait a minute. We live between 2 farms. And I wish God, please stop the cruelty to animals. All present blessings continue. Amen. And so the civil case went on and on and on, and we fought valiantly. And it was all on paper. And then, of course, it was no surprise to me that the U.S. attorney was just as crooked as anyone could be. Just as depraved, dissolute, abandoned, unprincipled as a human being could be. And so the judge was too. Her name was Ross. Ross. And she was crooked. And we wrote beautiful papers. Now I don't have to read these papers to you because they are all in the museum. And it's all on videotape. And it's all on paper, and you can find them. And so finally came the sentencing. And great hero, American veteran of D-Day, Normandy, Franklin Buell, was sentenced to 2 years of probation and a $2,000 fine because he was beat up by an insane Pinkerton, Bruiser Ken. And Glendora was sentenced to 2 years of probation and $2,000 fine because she was beat up with 6 bruises and dropped onto the floor by a crazy Pinkerton named Kenneth Mildworm, Bruiser Ken. It's all right. His conscience has been bruised badly by that since
1997, 1998. Let's hope that it made a person of it. And took the savagery out of it. And so we went off to probation. And I would tell the probation officer a joke of the day. And that's about all there was to it. Well, what did you do all week? Well, we went to Lynbrook, and we edited a chat with Glendora. And we got permission to take our tapes out to Hauppauge, to drop them off at Hauppauge on Motor Parkway, 1600 Motor Parkway. And we picked up our tapes in Brooklyn, and in Manhattan, and in Queens, and in the Bronx. That's what we did all week. Then an interesting thing happened. I wanted to sue Bryant's crew, who wrote the paper about me that was all lies, just like the things that happened to Elena Sassar. And I wanted to sue the law clerk. I wanted the law clerk's address. And they wouldn't give it to me because these law clerks come for a year, do their damage, try to impress a big law firm so that they can get a job, continuing their lives of lying, stealing, and cheating, and covering up. Isn't that an awful way to make a living? Aren't you glad you're not a lawyer? Aren't you glad you're not a judge? And they wouldn't give it to me. And I had every right to know it. And I met Bryant's law clerk going down the sidewalk in front of the White Plains City Court, the police station. And as he was going that way, north, and I was going that way, west. And as our paths crossed, I told him something about, stop faking it. I have a right to that address. You give it to me. Well, these people went back and they told Bryant, and Bryant tried to make a case out of that on my probation to penalize me for what I said. Well, I think there's a thing called free speech on the sidewalk, isn't there? That deserves and gets the utmost protection by the Constitution of the United States. And so this was on October, Columbus Day weekend. And they cornered me into the office, the deputy probation officer and the chief probation officer. And they tried to get me to talk. And I kept saying, I reserve, I reserve, I reserve. I was good-natured about it. I gave the atmosphere, the room full of levity, but they kept trying and trying. And so they let me go if I promised to get back to them on Monday. And I said, Monday is a holiday. It's Columbus Day. Oh, okay, we'll make it Tuesday. So I went home. And immediately I sat down and wrote my complaint and filed a lawsuit against them for violation of my civil rights. And I filed it in the United States District Court for the District of Columbia. And it was one of the greatest civil rights cases ever brought under Title 42 of the United States Code, 1983, violation of civil rights, and 1985, conspiracy. And I just listed page after page of the American civil rights that were violated. And as soon as I got it written, I made out the service list, and I made out what opus it was of the legal papers I had written, and how much it cost and how many hours it was. And I took it to Staples and I had it copied. And Sunday night, as Franklin is driving, and I'm in the back seat, he tells me that he doesn't think I should file that lawsuit. And I had the greatest respect for what Franklin says. And I thought about it and thought about it, but the strong call was overwhelming. And I got it into the mail Monday or Tuesday or something. Anyway, it got served over the weekend. And I got a call that the visit to their office that was set up for Tuesday, and is it ever set up, for Tuesday had been canceled. Don't come in. And I never heard from those probation officers again. They had been caught. They had been caught doing dirt in America. And after that, I got a letter that we were to report, or that Glendora was to report to the probation officer in Suffolk County, the Eastern District of New York. You see, they said that I had to report to the probation officer in the Southern District of New York because that's where I lived, Westchester. That's what they swore up and down in Brooklyn, that I couldn't go to Brooklyn to the probation officer. I had to go to Westchester. But then, to fit their own convenience, when they wanted to get rid of me and were afraid to see me anymore, they just changed it all around and said, you go to the probation officer for the Eastern District of New York. Way out in Suffolk. Where was it? It was in Hopwood. Well, they didn't bother me any. And Franklin had the choice of continuing in White Plains. And of course they loved him. He was a superb gentleman. And he never threatened anybody. And he was so amiable and good-natured and kind-hearted. He had that loving kindness. Because they said, oh, he can continue to report in White Plains, or he had the option of going with me. So naturally he took the option of going with me. And so when we got out to Hopwood, we told him how we were framed. And we reported to our probation officer, and I kind of liked it going out there because I could go into the clerk's office and pull out the files and read the files while I was waiting for the probation officer. But there was something fiendish about those people. Very, very, very strange personalities. Very warped personalities. And so after a while, I made a I motioned to ASRAC practically every week that this probation should be discontinued. It was serving no purpose legitimate, no purpose legal. It was serving no purpose illegitimate or illegal. And I went to ASRAC's courtroom to make that motion, that application in person, and face all those nasty Pinkertons. And the U.S. Marshal, and all the other liars. Oh, how they lie. And she said, oh, how are you? And she was talking to three lawyers at the bench. And I waited for her to be through. And I waited for the opportunity for me to speak to her. And waited for the opportunity for the other people to have their chance to speak first. And when she got through with those three lawyers, let me show you what she did. Okay? Her chamber door is behind the bench, all right? And rather than address the reason I was there, she was very careful not to look at me. And when the three lawyers left the bench and uncovered her, she got up this way with her eyes down on the floor, folks. And she kept her eyes on the floor, and she stepped down the 2 steps, and she went into her office that way. She could not face me, eyeball to eyeball. She knew that she had sold her soul to Mephisto. Well, I kept writing these motions to stop the probation. And eventually, I got an order from her that she consulted with the U.S. Attorney, and she found that the U.S. Attorney said that we had been very cooperative during our probations. And that they could be terminated. And I don't know where this was in the middle of the 2 years, whether it was a year after it or what. We won. But you want to know what really did it and what the advantage is over you poor people who get in these things? And it happens. Happens every day, several times a day, in every court in the United States of America, these frame-ups. That's part of the elite, too, enslaving us. They want us all to go to jail, and the government keeps building prisons and detention centers. That's part of it, too. Enslave us, put us in jail. And you know they get a bond on every person who's in jail, and they sell that bond to bond dealers, and the bond dealers make money. Well, anyhow, what did it was, on television every week, I put their names up in bold letters and in beautiful colors, and I read the slop that they had written on these papers. And I guess they just didn't want any more of that. I think that's what did it. What do they care whether we were cooperative or not? Cooperative meaning selling your soul. And also, I put up week after week after week, you cannot trust the Fraudulent Bureau of Investigation. The Department of Injustice, or the U.S. Marshal Disservice, in big letters. 30 minutes, week after week after week, all over the New York market area. I think it was the exposure on television that made them finally curl up and atrophy. What else happened in the period from 1998 to 2002? We moved from New Rochelle to Mount Vernon. There were 5 outdoor cats that we tried to rescue. A woman named O'Connor and a man, and then another woman who was from Poland. They had kept the cats, and they were trying to find homes for them. The cats by now were big cats. They were beautiful. I think there were 3 orange ones and a black one. And I took 3 of them. And they were wild cats. You couldn't get them to sit in your lap. But finally one of them did. And then I paid for getting them all spayed and neutered. And one of the black cats, the window was open in one of the offices, and she went out the window and then found her way. It was only a couple of blocks, but she found her way back to the woods where she used to live up by their house. And then another one went into the stove, in the back of the stove, the gas stove, and wouldn't come out in the daytime. And I never saw the cat. But it looked so much like the other cat. And then the third one, I woke up one morning and the cat is in the corner of that office, curled up and dead. What could happen to a cat overnight? The cat was healthy. And only one stayed with us. And when we moved to New Rochelle, when we moved to Mount Vernon, now that cat went with us, and also Katie cat, and also Jeannie cat. And that cat, the door was open, you rushed out, you never should have. But since you never open a door with a cat around, it isn't that they want to go out, it's just that they want to see if that door's open, are they safe? And they look around to see if they're safe. And he went outdoors and was instantly killed by a car. And I buried him in the church lot. There were woods that the church owned behind the church parking lot, and I buried him there. Abide with him, past those evening tide, the darkness deepens, Lord, with him abide, when other helpers fail and comforts flee, help of the helpless, Lord, abide with thee. And Jeannie Cat died in Mount Vernon. And we loved the house in Mount Vernon. It was an old house, and you've seen it on television. It was a great big stone fireplace in the foyer, and then in the dining room there was another fireplace. And we were still editing at Lynbrook. And I taught Lori Galgano how to go on TV and taught her how to edit and how to do a public access show. And she's still doing it to this day, The Hidden Truth. And Lynbrook was a wonderful place to edit, and we had many happy hours there, and Franklin would sit in the green room, and he would wrap the tapes as I made them. And I was doing sometimes, up as much as 21 editions every week. And the greatest public access coordinator of all time, Amy Van Horn, was taking care of it. And she's so head and shoulders above the rest of the reprobates that they have now. And of course she was so good they fired her. If you're that good, you don't belong to Cablevision. But we thank you, Cablevision, for that editing there, and we thank you, Patrick, for the times when you acted like a real person until the time you sold your soul. And Maurice Cunningham, a witch, called up and said that Glendora couldn't edit anymore at Cablevision Lynbrook because she now lived in an area. By this time we moved from Mount Vernon up to Dutchess County, and she said we no longer lived in the Cablevision area. And we only missed it by 2 miles because the next town over, Hopewell Junction, was Cablevision Wappingers. But where we happened to be was RCN, which is a nice cable company, civilized, in contrast to the savagery of Cablevision. So I believe we're up to 2002. We rescued Rocky Dog, a lovely white dog who was so horribly abused. And I guess this caused problems with the landlord in New Rochelle, and he ended up to be a very undesirable immigrant from Hungary. And we thought he was a friend of ours, and his wife, and his 2 children, his 3 children. We bent over backwards to get along with them, and we had pizza parties together. It was nice. And then they turned Neanderthal. And I don't like Hungarians ever since. And they were accomplished musicians, too. French horn, violin, flute, piano. And we did many, many, many lawsuits, and we fought off John Porzio, and we won that. It took me a year to report the Porzio lying and cheating on television, and which resulted, I believe, in the removal of Rosanna Washington from the bench for all the reasons that you'll see in the videotapes, several videotapes. As I say, this record is all in the museum. And I liked the landlord at Mount Vernon. He was a Seventh-day Adventist. And I like Seventh-day Adventists. They don't kill animals. They don't eat meat. And I've always liked them. And I bought things from their stores for years. Every Seventh-day Adventist church has a store in the back that sells meatless products. And they're delicious. They're meat analogs. You wouldn't know that you weren't eating meat. Okay. Are we up to 2002? And the videotapes of those years are superb. They really tell the story. In the museum, we painted all of the boxes, red, white, and blue. You saw that. We went to the Supreme Court of the United States in Washington, D.C. with a matter of justice, and we rallied against the injustice in the courts, and that's where I met George McDermott. But a matter of justice is not doing anything They were going to do all kinds of things, but they didn't. Dr. Roginski. He was a physicist. Oh, yes, and Michael out in somewhere in Missouri, and he was giving classes in how to represent yourself, how to be pro se in a courtroom, and how to win your battles as a pro se without a lawyer, because you're not going to win your battles with a lawyer. Okay, the camera stopped. You got tired of listening. Let me tell you about the Glendora Happy Book. I know that you can be happy. Let me go over it with you very quickly. In the morning, the first thing, you spend your alone time with God. You find out what a wonderful person you are inside and how beautifully you've been created by God. You get onto the right track instead of dissipating your energies in all the wrong avenues. You count pure. Okay, folks, the camera got tired of listening to this. I have to do it over. About the third time I've had to do it over. First of all, the Glendora Happy Book. I want you to be happy, and I have full confidence that you can be happy. And I'll go over it very quickly for you. Spend your alone time with God the first thing in the morning, and you'll be amazing at the wealth that you will find out. You will be amazing at the wealth that's inside of you. Everything you want is inside of you. It's not out here. It's inside of you. And you write down what you hear, and you will find out that you are very specially created, different from everybody else, to do a very important job that nobody else can do as well as you can do, and that you have a different set of talents from everybody else's, and that you are marvelously created. And then during the day you count pure thoughts. See how many pure thoughts you can count. Call me up. Tell me if you can beat me. And then you pray for your enemies, and you count blessings. And every 15 minutes you rejoice about something. Wait! We got 1 minute to go. At least this clock says. Let's be on the safe side. I rejoice that I have you. I rejoice that you call me up and tell me about your progress. And so many people call about the Happy Book. It's about 64 people have called and asked for the Happy Book. And let me sing a hymn for all of these people. For all of the people in the New York Times who are hurting America. For all of these power, money, crazy group that's trying to enslave us and take the last bit of power and money out of us for their one world government. Let us sing this song for them. Breathe on them breath of God, fill them with life anew, that they may love as thou dost love, and do what thou wouldst do. Breathe on them breath of God, until their hearts are pure, until this earthly part of them glows with thy fire divine. Breathe on them breath of God, till they are wholly thine, and live with thee the perfect life of thine eternity. Send for a free Glendora Happy Book. I want you to be happy, and I know we can help you be happy. Jokes. Glendora, cheerful look at life. 2 minutes of goodwill, good cheer, and good humor brought to you by the man is standing at the Breathe on them breath of God till they are wholly thine, and live with thee the perfect life of thine eternity. Send for a free Glendora happy book. I want you to be happy. And I know we can help you be happy. Jokes. Glendora, cheerful look at life. 2 minutes of goodwill, good cheer, and good humor brought to you by. The man is standing at the gravesite, and he's reading the epitaph to his wife, and it says here lies an honest man and a politician. And he said, how come they put two people in the same grave? And the obituary in the newspaper said, do not send flowers, send all donations to Visa and MasterCharge. And remember this, that your undertaker is the last world, that you can always trust your undertaker. He's the last person in the world to let you down. The woman says you have to talk to your plants. And her husband says, well, I never heard any of them answer you. And she says, well, that's because they're mums. And she says, I have one plant that I won't even talk to. He thinks he knows everything. Marilyn was telling her girlfriend, my boyfriend said to me last night that when he looks into my eyes, time stands still. And her girlfriend says, yep, that's what my boyfriend told me last night. He said I had a face that would stop a clock. Out on the golf course, the golfer sliced the ball, went through the woods, rolled out onto the road, and it went into a creek alongside the road. Then he starts to go after it. And his friend says, you're not going to after that ball, are you? Yes, I am. That's my lucky ball. And the golf partner said to his partner, you're 20 minutes late. What happened? And his partner says, well, I had to toss a coin to see if I was going to mow the lawn or whether I was going to play golf. So that should take 20 minutes? Yeah, I had to toss it 100 times. And one golfer said, when I make a shot like that, I could go over there and drown myself in that pond. And his partner says, no, you couldn't. You wouldn't hold your head down long enough. Harry had a bad day in the golf course, and he threw his golf bag into the pond. He threw his golf clubs into the pond. He threw his golf ball into the pond. He goes up to the clubhouse. He slits his wrist. He's standing there bleeding to death. George comes in.